joined our workshop on developing cross-cultural understanding and competence in early intervention. I'm Mary Warren. I am adjunct faculty to the Infant and Early Childhood Development Program at Fielding Graduate University. Delighted to be part of this Y0 to 5 virtual conference. Joining me are Plern, Pratoommas, and Sara, Clancey, who are both students with the program, and they really have done most of the work for this presentation, which is very consistent with the Fielding model. Fielding is very student-led. It is up to the student to use faculty to help them really investigate what interests them. So I am delighted to be part of that kind of a learning environment. We all three have added a great deal to this collaborative presentation, and Sara and I in particular want to acknowledge Plern's technology expertise, particularly with PowerPoint and videoing. So let's just get started here. If I can get this to work. Okay. If there were any participants, we would ask you to put in the chat something about yourself, your role, where you're located, and how did you hear about this conference. And we would encourage you to tweet about the conference at hashtag Y0to5 and hashtag child development. We'll talk briefly today about an overview of early intervention. EI is early intervention in the United States as well as internationally. We will provide a couple of cross-cultural models and some tips and tools for practitioners in the field. Then we have the pleasure of learning from a parent in Thailand who has a child with special needs and has really had the benefit of early intervention. Then we would like your participation in any discussion that would interest you. So my name is Mary Warren. My picture is on the left of your screen. I am adjunct faculty, as I said, and the courses that I teach are in law, policy, and advocacy, particularly around the U.S. law regarding early intervention, birth to 3, and then ongoing special ed, 3 to 21. We are very interested in learning what is happening with law, policy, and regulation in other parts of the world. And we've got several tips on how we can advocate for those families with children with special needs. I also am teaching a class in cross-cultural understanding in early childhood, and I'm developing other courses related to culture because I have an undergraduate degree in cultural anthropology, a PhD in sociology, and I'm very interested in how culture affects all of us. So, Plern?
Hi, my name is Plern Pratoommas, and like Mary mentioned earlier, I'm a doctoral student. I've actually been with the program for about 6 years, recently completed all of my courses, and am now planning and focusing on my dissertation, which will actually be about the experiences of parents in Thailand and how they've been accessing and experiencing early intervention services. My background is in early childhood special education with a specific emphasis in autism. I'm actually in San Francisco. I'm the early intervention and inclusion director at one of the largest nonprofits here. And so I oversee a lot of inclusive early intervention programs, as well as a lot of home-based programs in the Bay Area. I do a lot of work in Thailand, and I typically go back 2 or 3 times a year. In 2010, I helped set up the Rainbow Room, which is now a foundation, and our mission is to spread positive awareness about children with special needs and their families. We're also kind of like a family resource center. There's a lot of support groups, and it's been operating now for 6 years, and it's actually run by parents of children with special needs. I'm a board member at this point and provide consultation and training opportunities. I think that's it. Sara?
Hi, I'm Sara Clancey. I'm an occupational therapist and I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. I work in the early intervention program for the state, and so that would be AZIP. I do home visiting with families who have children who've qualified with a significant delay for our services. So they would be ages 0 to 3. And as the OT in our team-based model, I usually work with most of the babies and the kids who have sensory processing difficulties. I also work as an OT out in one of the elementary schools in Tuba City on the Navajo reservation. And since I've lived in Flagstaff, I've worked in many different towns on the Navajo reservation and the Hopi reservation.
Great. Thanks, Sara. So now Plern is going to kind of walk us through early intervention, a little bit of the history of early intervention in the United States, and then she'll go on into the international arena.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to start off just kind of talking about how it developed here, just because all three of us operate from this sort of this place. And so it's really helpful to know kind of historically what's been happening and what's been shaping the field and therefore our practice. So early intervention in the United States is actually shaped by 4 different fields, and that's why it's kind of complex. And there's many schools of thought. So particularly in the US, it was shaped by early childhood education and specifically the establishment of the kindergarten school and the nursery schools earlier, a while back. Another field is maternal and child health services. So the Children's Bureau was started in 1912, and it was in the Department of Labor. And it's basically a program that focuses on the well-being of children, and that was really one of the very first initiatives. So that's very important. The Social Security Act in 1935 actually provided a lot of services that promoted maternal health in children. The field of special education plays a very big role too in the development of early intervention, specifically residential institutions, and then a lot of public school programs have been focusing on providing specialized education for children with special needs. And then most recently, I think the field of child development has really boomed, and there's 2 specific findings that have kind of shaped how we do things now within the field. And that's the understanding that early relationships are very important, and that the whole nature and nurture debate is basically irrelevant because there's actually a reciprocal relationship between nature and nurture. And so people might have heard of the transactional model of development. And basically that model states that development really is the interplay between the organism and the environment. So those are some things that have kind of shaped early intervention in the United States. If you look at historical periods, the first half of the 20th century was labeled the forget and hide period. And basically children who had a lot of physical disabilities were kind of kept at home. And I'm sure depending on where you live in the world and how early intervention is, I think there's still some of that in some places. And then the second half of the 20th century was the screen and segregate phase. So during that time, there was a lot of institutions. And so a big practice back then was identifying individuals who have or had disabilities and to kind of segregate them and isolate. In the mid-1970s, it started shifting to a more of an identify and help phase. So there were a lot of child find programs, for example. There was a little bit of a shift. And then right now we're really in the educate and include period in early intervention. And so that's why there's a huge focus on inclusion. And specifically when in my current job right now, all of our early intervention programs are basically within the child's natural environment. And that's something that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So that's a brief kind of snapshot of early intervention in the United States. So both, I think we do, Mary, Sara, and I have always talked about kind of what's going on outside of the United States as well in terms of early intervention. I'm sorry, I was on the wrong slide. Well, I've noticed a couple of people joining us. Hi, Emily. Hi, Betsy, you made it. Do we want to do introductions real quick?
For me?
Yeah, sure. We want to know about who's here.
Okay. My name is Emily Camacho. I am a audiology student at Washington University School of Medicine, and one of my friends is pursuing a PhD for infancy and early childhood education, and so she let me know about this conference going on.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to go ahead and just kind of sit and see what it's about for a little bit before I get back to studying, but
sure. Well, thanks for stopping by, I guess. We just introduced ourselves. So I'm Plern, and I'm a student at Fielding Graduate University. I do a lot of cross-cultural work. Mary and Sara, you want to just say?
I'm adjunct. Yeah, I'm Mary Warren. I'm adjunct faculty for this fielding program, and delighted to work with both Sara and Plern. And glad to have you, Emily. And Betsy, if you're still around, we're happy to have you too. Sara, you have to unmute. There you go.
I'm Sara Clancey. I'm also a student at Fielding. I just started in January, and I'm an occupational therapist in Flagstaff, Arizona. I do early intervention in the homes.
Okay, Plern, so you're talking about the U.S.?
Yes. So some of the current trends in early intervention in the United States, and I'm sure if you practice here, you're very familiar with these terms. So family-centered practice is one of the probably established trends at this point. And basically what it means is that professionals treat parents as partners, and there's a huge focus on empowerment. So it's not really about the therapist kind of going in and saying telling parents what to do, but it's more about, okay, I'm here for you. What do you need to work on? There's a huge focus on the relationship between the professional and the family. And then there's also a huge focus on relationships within the family and how a part of our roles is to support those relationships. I talked about natural environment in one of the previous slides, but there's this focus now on providing intervention within natural settings. And what that means is, for an infant, the home is a natural setting. It's just the environment that typically developing peers spend their time in. So it could be, childcare programs. It could be other environments in the community, the home, things like that. A part of the whole natural environment movement is that there's also a focus on routines-based intervention. So instead of taking the child out of the classroom, we really want to be thinking about what natural routines happen during the day so that we can embed our intervention into those routines. And this really helps the generalization of skills. And that's just so that the child can use the skill across a variety of different settings. There's a huge focus on inclusion and embeddedness. And, there's this expectation that intervention is to be individualized and to take place within an inclusive setting. So for example, at the place that I work, all of our intervention is done in the child development classrooms, along with 18 other children, for example. So, it's very complex the way it plays out, but the philosophy is that we're not segregating, we're not isolating, we're all together. And there's a really big focus too on the fit between what your intervention goals are and what the demands of the child's environment is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later too. There's a huge focus on functional outcomes. So IFSP goals or IEP goals have to be functional. And what that means is you're not going to teach a child or spend a lot of time teaching a child how to do this one discrete skill. You're really going to focus on pragmatic or like functional communication, and it has to have some kind of relevance to the child and the family. And then lastly, in early intervention, it's really important to be interdisciplinary and collaborative. Next slide. So what is early intervention like in other countries? We did a quick literature review and also in combination with our own experiences. There's a couple of things that we've been able to see in other countries. Personally, when I work in Thailand, I would say that there's less resources. There's early intervention is provided in more of a medical model kind of context. So how an early intervention professional conducts his or her intervention session is a little bit different than what I see over here. But overall, in other countries of the world, and specifically in developing countries, there's been a decrease in infant mortality rates. And what this means is that there's an increase in children who survive, but who might have a developmental delay or disability. And actually, the World Health Organization and UNICEF published a discussion paper related to early childhood development and disability. And so what they had wrote about was that children with disabilities weren't really identified until they were much older. And then children with disabilities are disproportionately exposed to risk factors such as poverty, stigma and discrimination, poor caregiver interaction, institutionalization, violence, abuse, and neglect, and that there's very limited access to programs and services, even more so than children who do not have developmental delays. In the paper, they also discussed how best to support the development of children with disabilities. And of course, I think if you're in the field of early intervention, you know that early identification is it's really important. And having assessments that are linked directly to intervention. So it's not just about finding out what we need to do, but it's also linking that information to how we're going to do it. In terms of service provision, we can support children with disabilities by ensuring that our children have access to mainstream services such as healthcare, education, all of the other supports and services that are available to other children and families. We also need to have targeted services available and provided, such as early childhood intervention or therapeutic services and assistive devices. There also needs to be family services that are culturally appropriate and that meets the needs of each family. And then lastly, monitoring and evaluation. So how, with all of these things, how are they beneficial to children and families? So to summarize, in this discussion paper, the World Health Organization and UNICEF suggest the following areas for action. 1, the inclusion of children with disabilities in mainstream policies, systems, and services. Development and strengthening of programs which specifically target young children with disabilities and their family. The involvement of children with disabilities and families in all early childhood development activities, capacity development of human resources. So there needs to be an effort put into developing professionals, practitioners, just people who can do the work. There needs to be public awareness and understanding about children with disabilities. And then finally, data collection and research. So Sarah's going to talk to you a little bit about some models that could work cross-culturally. And the reason why it's important is because we need to have some way of conceptualizing the work that we do. Sarah?
Thanks, Plern. Yeah, we chose just 2 models, although there are probably many others. The first we wanted to mention was the infant mental health model. And the definition of infant mental health based on the 0 to 3 website is the developing capacity for infant and toddlers to form close and secure relationships with their caregivers, experience, regulate, and express emotions, and then explore the environment and learn. This is all done in the context of family, community, and cultural expectations. The other model that we wanted to talk about was the Bronfenbrenner's ecological model. And we can go to the next slide. And Bronfenbrenner created this model which looks at all the dynamic systems that can influence a child. And he starts with the child in the middle as the microsystem. And that includes that individual's strengths, challenges, beliefs, their state of health and well-being. The mesosystem is what surrounds it, and that includes the child's family, the daycare they attend, the doctors they're able to see, church or synagogue or place of worship, and the schools. And those have a direct impact on the child. And outside of that, we have the exosystem, which includes family or friends, their access to community health and welfare services, the school board, the neighborhood they're living in. And these also play a role in the child's development. And finally, surrounding that is the macrosystem, and that's a broader ideology of the culture they live in, the laws that govern the country, town, city that they live in, customs and cultures, and their social class. And along the side, you'll see the chronosystem. Oh, just go back one more, sorry. Chronosystem, and that's the changes that can take place in the environment and the person over time. And so I think what's important about this model is to understand that not only are the outer layers influencing the child, but the child has the ability to influence the outer layers. And then it's a very dynamic and reciprocal relationship, bidirectional relationship between all of those factors in the child. All right, go ahead. In the model of the circle of security, this can also be experienced across all cultures. And it's a visual kind of describing how when a child is able to develop a secure base or a secure attachment with their caregiver, that they're supported, that supports all the development that goes on in the other areas or domains of development, including motor, cognitive, communication, adaptive skills. And this secure base allows them to be curious about the world around them. And with that curiosity, then that allows them to go often leave the secure base and explore the world around them and learn to be independent and confident to go out and explore the world. Yet it always offers them a safe haven within the parent's relationship with them to return for comfort and protection and receive the love they need to reorganize and then go out again into the world. And it's just kind of this circle that repeats itself. And the infant mental health promotes this security through helping establish secure relationships and attachments, but it also gives parents the support and the confidence they need to really delight in their child and in their role as a parent. Go ahead. So now we'll start to look at some tips for practitioners. First, we'll talk about understanding the family's culture and how that influences your relationship as a practitioner with them. How to really focus on partnering with parents and working as a team and helping them build their confidence. And then we'll learn about and practice using a variety of tools that will help actually get more hands-on in this work. And then we always just want to keep in mind that the hidden goal of all of early intervention is really to have parents delight in their children and have confidence in working and meeting their children's needs.
Thanks, Sara.
Mm-hmm.
So our primary point here is that the family is really the primary vehicle for the transmission of culture, and this is an intergenerational effort. But just as Sara talked about in the Bronfenbrenner model, the ecological model, this is kind of a two-way street. So the family influences the child influences the family, and this continues based on their cultural context, generation to generation. Child rearing is very strongly organized by culture. There are different child rearing beliefs and practices. All of those will affect child developmental outcomes, and the role of various family members can change by culture and over time. But this also lends meaning to the behavior of both parents and children. And all of these things are borne out through those daily routines, interaction patterns, and advice-seeking behaviors on the part of parents and children. So family culture and early intervention is really an opportunity for us to help the parent to co-regulate their child, to be with their child emotionally, to let their child know that they are loved, that they are safe. And we want parents, therefore, to be involved in our early intervention sessions with the child. This is not just an opportunity for a therapist to take the child in a separate room, but we would like the parent to be involved because the parent is involved with this child 24/7 and needs to learn how to help to advance the child's capacities and learn from the therapist. We really hope to inculcate a belief in the endless potential of the child. Let's maximize what this child is capable of. And let's do that within our learning about what the parent values and believes, both about their child, about their parenting capacities themselves, about how they were parented. Important, again, to reiterate that we would like the early interventionist to help the parent to delight in their child. So we want the parent to help the early interventionist to know what brings joy to your child. Mindfulness is another wonderful tool to be used in this developing relationship, and Sara will talk a little bit more about that in the FAN model. But we want to advance the idea of following the child's lead based in play and fun. Here is one tool that could be used by an early interventionist to help understand a little bit more about the parents' values and beliefs, their culture. This has been adapted from the adolescent parenting interview, and it is geared now, it's been modified to gear toward younger children, but it's an interesting tool to use when you want to go in and find out a little bit more about the family culture. So for instance, if you ask the parent, do you think a child should have a lot of toys to help him develop? You'll get a lot of different responses, and that could be very culturally different. And it may help you as the therapist then to understand what kinds of activities do I want to bring into this house to be consistent with the parent's beliefs, but still maximize the child's potential. Same way with I read to my child every day. Does the parent And I would maybe like to think about the one that says children should explore their environment independently. So how is that possible for a child with special needs? Are parents willing to allow that? It's important for all children to be able to explore, but perhaps there is the need to stretch the parent's capacity to think about how independent can I let my child with special needs be? Can I let my child make choices? Can I identify those choices that I can agree that the child can choose from? Either one of them is a good choice as far as I'm concerned, but this increases the child's capacity to learn to make choices. And do I talk to my child to explain what we are doing while we're changing the diaper, while we're making food, while we're taking a walk? All of these are opportunities both to find out about the parent's values and beliefs and what could the early interventionist bring to the interactions to strengthen the parent-child interaction and the child's potential. Another interesting way to think about working within the culture is brought to us from Jessica Ball at the School of Child and Youth Care at the University of Victoria, Canada. She suggests that respectful engagement that supports and protects many paths to well-being is really our goal. Certainly to have respectful dialogue with the parent and encourage their equal participation in how this early intervention process is going to go. Because if we can increase the quality of the connection in all ways, between the therapist and the parent, between the parent and the child, that will definitely influence the outcomes for that child and family. And it will also give the practitioner ways to think about goals for the child's development, the program services and professionals that need to be brought in, who should be involved in the natural supports as well, how to respond to problems so that they will not conflict with family values and beliefs as much as possible. So she identifies 5 principles of this cultural safety: protocols, personal knowledge, partnerships, process, and positive purpose. And we're going to talk about these in a little bit more detail, each one. So under the protocols, she suggests that certainly we need to show respect. We can do that for asking permission, involving informed consent. Ask about the culture. Learn more for yourself. Demonstrate reciprocity. Learning goes both ways. The parent can teach us a lot. We can teach the parent as well. We want to engage not only the community resources and other professionals, but also the family. And we need to find additional mentors in the community of practice that can be helpful to this family. So in thinking about maybe the reciprocity, we want to use a family as an example here. This is a family who has a little boy named Benny. And one conversation that you might have with the parent is, you know your family the best, So during our visits, I hope you will help me to understand how you want Benny to fit into your family. What does your family like to do? How can we figure out how to help Benny to participate as well? So we're really demonstrating that this learning goes both ways. Under personal knowledge, and again, we're thinking about cultural safety, so we need to really think about our social location and power. As a therapist, we have power. Where is the family in their agreeableness to dealing with therapists and others in a position of power? Do we need to be critically aware of that? It might be really important too, in particular when you're working with Native peoples, to identify your own cultural affiliations and your personal, professional persona. Introduce yourself in terms of your cultural identities. So I might say, I am not a Native, I'm not part of a Native group, so I cannot go through my clans and my lineage. But I can say that I have a sister with cerebral palsy, and I have a degree in early childhood development. So that may help because our target child, Benny, also has cerebral palsy, and this may help to connect a little bit for the family with me as the interventionist. So in terms of partnerships, we know that early intervention is based on relationships, and those relationships develop the best through authentic communication. So that is sharing our knowledge versus telling, being the expert. We really are trying to collaboratively problem solve with the parent versus exerting our expert authority. We want to strengthen this mutual capacity to problem solve versus the therapist just saying this is the way you have to do it. And we want to talk about how can we move supports into place that fit for this particular family. So we're going to see in a minute when Plern talks about the echo mapping tool, how we can find out about both formal and informal natural supports, as well as professional supports needed for this family. And we can also talk about mom's preferences for using supports, both informal and professional, to meet her family's goal of including Benny in the things that they want to do as a family. So then we think a little bit about the process piece, and certainly we want to ensure dignity, equality for all parties, negotiate the goals and activities. Remember, we are definitely back and forth here, and we want to talk less and listen more. We want to find out more about the family, how they want to involve their child, what their goals are, and we may want to expand those goals because of the opportunities that we can provide the child, but we first have to listen. In negotiating those goals and activities, I, as the interventionist, have found out that this family wants to take a vacation on the beach, and they want Benny to come too. So Benny uses a wheelchair. How can we include Benny in this family relationship and not limit everybody else's fun and opportunity to be in the sand and the water? What activities maybe do we need to start helping Benny to even feel sand on his feet and in his hands? What about making sure that we read some books about the beach and talk about seashells, and then involve the rest of Benny's siblings in helping him to look at the treasures that they bring off of the beach when they've actually been to the beach? So there are lots of building opportunities beforehand, and then certainly opportunities after the experience to keep building on those, because we want to make sure that our interventions have a positive purpose. We want to ensure that we are being confidential with the family. We're not negatively labeling them or their child. We don't want to do harm to anybody, but we do want to make our services matter. We want to ensure that there are real benefits. And certainly a family vacation to the beach with Benny would be a wonderful memory maker. So that's just a great example of how we can involve the family's culture in what they want to do and keeping this culturally safe. So Plern, you want to talk about the echo mapping tool?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. And, when we were going over those slides, three of us, we talked about how that really sets the tone. So keeping all the things that you just mentioned in mind, Mary, is a really good place to start, because it goes to kind of your values place in you and how you see families and the respect that you show families. So next I'm going to talk about eco mapping, and it's actually a specific exercise that you can do with families. It's recommended that you do this at the start, like during intake, when you meet the parent, when you're kind of trying to get to know the parent more, but then you're also trying to figure out, what the next couple of months are going to look like. So it's funny when Sara, you were going over both of the models, the infant mental health model that focuses on relationships, and then Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model, eco mapping fits really well in between the two. Because basically what an eco map is a graphic representation of the nuclear family that's in the middle there, and then all of the supports, whether it's informal or formal, kind of around the family. And then the lines that you see connecting the middle box to the outer boxes actually signifies the strength of the relationship. And whether or not that particular support is very supportive, moderately supportive, minimally supportive, or if there's a conflict or a stressful relationship. So if you see the dotted lines, that depicts a stressful relationship. And the purpose really is this is supposed to be a joint activity, and it's, like I said, to get to know the family a little bit more. And furthermore, it's really to identify the existing resources that are available to a family for the purpose of making more appropriate recommendations. So to start off, you might say something like, okay, I want, to get a sense of who's available as resources to you and your family, which will help make our suggestions more relevant. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to walk you through how to draw an eco map with a family. And you first ask the question, okay, who lives at home with the child? And this is, you can call this the nuclear family. And so in this particular family, there's Karen, John, Susan, Andrew, Molly, and Alexis. And so you have the ages of each child in the brackets there. And then the next step, if you look at the picture on the right, is to ask about extended family members who do not live in the home. Now, if you notice, they're not in the same box. They have their own box outside. And then you would then ask questions and probes to kind of determine whether, those relationships are supportive or if they're a little bit stressful. And so I guess there's a lot of variations of different eco mapping processes that you could do or follow with families. This one I took from the routines-based early intervention, and that's this book. So Robin, who's the author, he cautions us to avoid asking, very specific questions about the relationships of the people in the home. So if you notice, we're not really drawing lines between Karen, John, Susan, Andrew, Molly, or Alexis. It's kind of, that's one unit. And then you're just examining the relationships between that family unit and the people around them. So after asking those probe questions, you might get a diagram like the one on the right. And as you can see, there's a dotted line between Jay's mother and the family unit, which indicates a stressful relationship. The line between Jay's father and the family unit is just one line, and that just depicts a relationship where there's minimal support. So it's minimally supportive, but not stressful. Next, you would ask questions about any friends of the person being interviewed. So you can see there's, best friends there. And then next, you would ask about friends of the other adults in the home. Then you would ask about any family friends or neighbors who aren't already mentioned. And then people at work. Because although these people, actually these work colleagues, for example, are considered intermediate supports because they might not provide parents with direct support, but it might be in a different capacity. And then you might ask about religious resources. And I think we don't typically consider religious resources, at least I don't, I haven't anyway. I haven't really thought about religious resources as, a formal type of support, but actually a lot of parents really find that, find religious supports to be very supportive. Sorry, there's just a lot going on in my house and I'm kind of distracted. Anyway, after that, you would then talk about professionals who are involved in the child's care. So this is what we call a formal support system. And as you can see, they are written into the model on the bottom. And so you would ask, what professionals work with your child. And this would include service coordinators, childcare workers, teachers, speech therapists, physical therapists, and other types of specialists that might see your child. And those are formal supports. And then you might ask about the other services that anyone in the family is receiving. So, for example, the other siblings, what do they do? Do they go to school? Do they have other therapies? A parent might also receive, they might also see a therapist. And so you might want to include that in the EcoMap as well. And then this one could be intrusive. It kind of depends on, what the family thinks, but you might want to ask about financial resources. I know that a lot of families that I work with right now in the city, this one's very, very important because they receive a lot of government funding, public funding, and things like that. So it's good to know. So some of the strengths of eco-mapping is that it's very family friendly. It can give you a way, or give families a way to begin engaging with professionals. It's relatively quick to do. Actually, it takes 10 to 15 minutes. And I think what's really important, and sometimes this is hard to see, it's not that obvious, but just the act of completing an eco-map with the family really conveys that early intervention is really concerned with the ecology of the whole family. So you're not just saying, what does your child receive? The focus is kind of on the child, but within the context of the family. And so because of that, it's truly family-centered. Now, of course, some concerns might be that it could be too intrusive to some families, but the author, McWilliam, cautions professionals that this is really a voluntary process and parents really don't have to answer anything or give you any information if they feel uncomfortable with it. Robin McWilliam also cautions professionals to not psychopathologize families, because you are talking about things like the quality of their relationships with other people. So just being careful about that. Eco-maps should be reviewed annually because, things change. As a child gets older, they might have less or more of some type of support. And I think it's really important for professionals to be mindful of whether or not there are changes in a family's informal supports. Are ties to informal supports getting weaker for the family? Are professionals or is formal supports taking over and replacing some of the family's informal supports? Because what we don't want to do is have all of the family's formal supports weaken the family's informal support structure. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then just to kind of illustrate that point, this is an example of the unintended effects of early intervention. So if you see the informal supports are in the boxes without the shading, and this is about a family that moved from Albuquerque. And so you can see that this thick line between the family and the Albuquerque friends are very thick. So that indicates a very strong support system. And if you notice the boxes that are shaded, those are all the formal supports. So what can you kind of gather from this depiction? I'll give you a minute. What's happening?
This poor family is totally scheduled.
Yeah. And I'm assuming that all of these formal supports aren't going to last them very long. They're not going to stay with this family for extended amounts of time. And so when all of these formal supports are gone, what's left?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think this happens a lot, say in Thailand, for example. Parents go from doctor to therapist to interventionist to hospital to clinics. They don't have time to kind of strengthen the informal support structure. So this is something that I feel like it's our duty as professionals in the field to always be mindful of this effect or potential effect. Next slide. And I put this in here because this is, working in the United States, there's this big push, for doing things in the natural environment. And I actually kind of wanted to put a question mark after that, because when we're thinking cross-culturally, of course, this legal provision doesn't really apply to a place like Thailand, for example. So I had a hard time kind of figuring out what this means in other countries, just given that, in the United States, there's a whole legal aspect of this, right? Like we have to provide intervention in the least restricted environment and to the extent possible, the child's natural environment. I think that reality is different in other countries, and I can only speak about Thailand because that's the only other country I've kind of been working in. But, natural environments is kind of the least of it's lower on the priority list because there's such a need for resources or a lack of resources and a need of professionals in Thailand. A lot of the work is done in clinics and hospitals, and that's not the natural environment. But, whenever I do go back and I work with professionals there, I always say, okay, it's okay. I can go see the child at the school. I can go see you at home. And parents really feel like that's a gift. So this is something that, it's prevalent here, but perhaps there still needs to be more work done in other countries.
Right. And I think that what's important perhaps about sharing the U.S. regulation is that it just does open up a thinking process for other countries and provides them some words that they could begin to try out in their own countries.
Yes. I don't know how much time we'll have to go through all of these things, but I personally feel that if you are working within an infant mental health model and you are working within Bronfenbrenner's ecological model, it's impossible to remove the child from his environment and work just with the child And, that's kind of more consistent with the medical model or the traditional special education approach where it's just about the child. And, the professional takes the child away, works with the child. And then, in Thailand, it's still kind of like that. And so I personally didn't come into the field wanting to work with adults. So this was something that I had to learn kind of on the job separately. I'm still learning more about this every day. And just to give you a perspective, I actually have to coach up to 70 teaching staff at the place that I work at. So I've learned really quickly that, boy, I really need to learn about how to coach adults. So I think that this goes really well with the ecological model and the infant mental health model, is that professionals really need to be effective coaches. And actually in the routines-based early intervention approach, early intervention is what happens in between the visits. So if you think about it in that way, I think it shifts what you do with families. So this is just, a summary of the key elements of coaching in early childhood. So there needs to be consistency with the principles of adult learning. There's a whole science behind that. And so reading up about how adults learn is going to help you be more successful. There's a focus on capacity building. It's non-directive, goal-oriented, solution-focused, performance-based. So there's a focus on actually doing. It's not just talking. It's reflective, collaborative, context-driven. So there has to be some kind of a relevance to the work that you're doing. And it should be as hands-on as it has to be. The 5 key characteristics of effective coaching is that there needs to be joint planning. So it's not just you going in and saying, okay, you need to do this, 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 this. There needs to be some kind of joint discussion, observation. There needs to be some kind of action, reflection, and then feedback. And these are the qualities of an effective coach. So parent coaching is a cyclical process. So, you're going to observe, problem solve, reflect, and then there's direct teaching and demonstration, and then there's guided feedback and practice. But then you have to it's an iterative process. You have to do it again and again and again. And it's just a very dynamic process. These are some evidence-based coaching strategies. So when you're there and you've got a structure started and you're working with the parent or, a teacher or a caregiver, these are some things that you can do in order to effectively coach. So there's expanding on the caregiver's ideas. So that might sound like, that's a great idea. Is there another toy of Benny's that you can practice that with? There's a strategy called color commentary. And so if you imagine it's like you're being the sideline announcer and you're just kind of narrating. So an example would be, Benny seems to really like this ball. Let's see if he will ask for it if it's out of reach. There's reflective suggestion. So I've been watching you feed Benny and noticed that he slumps in his chair. Have you noticed this? There's linking of information sharing to family priorities. So linking what you're seeing to perhaps a discussion you've had with the parent earlier. Like, I know you want Benny to use more words. Sometimes children need to learn how to understand what they mean before they're able to use them. You might name the dilemma. So it seems like there's a lot of opportunities here. You could do X or Y. Would you like to talk about the pros and cons of each? Hypothesizing and experimenting. I actually do this a lot. What would happen if, okay, let's try. There's commenting. I noticed that you gave Benny some of the toys and withheld some of the pieces so he could ask you. There's performance feedback. Benny reached for the picture of the ball and you said ball. You picked ball. So you provided a model and expansion for Benny. He responded by shaking his head yes. So your timing was right on. So it's giving feedback on the parent's performance, not on your own. And reflective feedback is pointing out what happened and then getting the parent to reflect a little bit more. And then there's self-disclosure. And that just, you might want to share your own experiences, but we might want to be careful, because what we don't want to communicate is that our way is the right way. And then parents, parents could feel pressured by that. And then notes and planning is just, you might summarize, you might take notes, you might share the notes with parents. It's a good way to kind of plan ahead as well. If you want kind of a checklist of the elements that are effective in parent coaching, this is a great resource.
And we will post this PowerPoint, so it will be on the Moodle site at Fielding if our audience would like to catch these links. So Sara, you want to talk about the fan, another tool?
I would. And I know our time, are we still trying to finish at 10:30?
I think we started a little later, so we can keep going a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
maybe we'll try to maybe get the video in within the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do that. All right. The FAN model is a model that was developed by Linda Gilkerson at the Erickson Institute in Chicago. And it's used as part of the Fussy Babies Network approach. And it's a model that practitioners can use to help them match their interventions to the client's needs in the moment. And I think we've all walked into a home, if you're a home visitor, and just kind of found the parent really upset about something and kind of not in the middle of a crisis almost. And so this is a really great model to call upon and visit and then use to just kind of work through a lot of those feelings and get to a place where you've helped the parent come up with some ideas, but also reflect and hopefully built in some confidence in their parenting and more understanding of what their child might be going through, what they're seeing. So this is an ARCed model. At the beginning, we really start with questions like, what's this for you, to help our understanding of what the experience the parent is having. And then as we work through these strategies, we get towards the middle and we want to make sure to check in and ask, have we gotten to what you wanted to talk about today, just to make sure that you're on track and really starting to understand the parents' experiences and helping them address what the problem was for that day. And then finally at the end, in the reflection portion, we'll ask, what would you like to remember? What are 3 words you can use to describe your child now, as opposed to when we started this conversation, and just kind of help the parents reflect themselves and realize how far they've come just through and what capacities they've built. All right, next slide, please. So the model uses core processes. The first that we want to and need to remember is mindful self-regulation of ourselves as practitioners. This is where we create a calm presence so that we can be more fully engaged with this client. We want to remember or say to ourselves, I can contain this and stay connected. Our goal is to, you want to, as the practitioner, you want to stay in, have a balance within yourself so that we can be fully present for the parent. Empathetic inquiry is where we're asking the client or the parent, what has this been like for you? And we're exploring their feelings, their concerns. We're inviting them to share their subjective experience. We want our message to them to be, where you are is okay, and that we're really non-judgmental, that we can be validating to what they're going through and let them know that their feelings matter. In the collaborative exploration phase, and you move from one step to the next as the parent seems ready to go on and kind of when they've released some of those feelings and that they're ready to start thinking of maybe what the baby's going through, then you move into the collaborative exploration. And you may need to go back and forth. It's kind of a dynamic flow of using this model through an intervention session. So yeah, collaborative exploration is really thinking and trying to understand what the baby might be reflecting in their behaviors, if that's what the parents have been seeing. We want to let them know, our message would be, let's understand this together. Let's develop a shared understanding of what the problem is. We come up with theories about the problems, or go over what strategies they've tried that may or not be working. And then just kind of that back and forth exploration with the families. So, next slide. The next step would be capacity building, and that's the doing step. This is where the practitioner helps the parent become more attuned, and maybe we ask in the collaborative exploration some guiding questions to help the parent kind of understand where the baby is or why they might be doing it, get to see it through their point of view. We want to let the parents know that they can do this. It's also a confidence building step, and the practitioner needs to remain patient and open and curious. And we generate approaches based on the parents' observations. So we really help the parents explore and become more attuned to their child in this step. And then finally, towards the end of the session, we'll get into the integration or reflection. And this is where the parents have definitely moved past the emotional part of their session, and they've really been able to come up with some insights into their child and some reflective points on maybe how they were responding to their own behaviors or feelings. And this is the message you can share with them, is you and your baby can grow through this hard time. And hopefully, as they are able to do more and more capacity building and build that confidence, the next time they'll realize, oh, I've been here before and I was able to work through it, and they can kind of draw on some of that experience they've had with you, and the support you've offered them to use that confidence to help understand the problem in the future and come up with some insight and strategies they can use on their own. In the integration phase, the practitioner provides a helpful narrative around the stressful experience, and they provide a time for the parents to reflect. So, at the end of your session, this would be the end of your session where you ask, is there anything you'd like to remember that was helpful for you? What 3 things, how would you describe your child now? And just kind of help them with open-ended questions explore how far they've come and how they've been able to change just in the course of your session. And the idea being, as they get more confident in their parenting skills and their understanding of their child, that builds not only their capacity to parent and their confidence, but also, again, comes back to finding delight and joy of being a parent. And with
Great. Thanks, Sara. Okay, I'm going to stop the share of this PowerPoint because we have a video coming up that we hope that you all can see. Plern has interviewed a parent in Thailand, and here we go.
Thank you for your time. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Rosalina Alexander McKay. I'm a Thai citizen, and I'm a mother of 2 beautiful girls. The older one is 14 years old now, and the little one is 8 years old, going 9, and she has a diagnosis of trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome.
Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit about Gabby?
Well, Gabby was born in the States, so that was very fortunate for us because we had started early intervention with her when she was 3 months old. And it was, the therapists have been visiting our house and work with her in the comfort of our environment. And it was really good for me to see that and get involved in the sessions as well. And then when I was when she was about like 1 year, 7 months, we moved back to Thailand. And in Thailand, the services are all over the place, and it was not as comprehensive as what you have in the States. So, but we were very fortunate to come back to an opening of a new center, which is a one-stop shop. So we were able to have PT, OT, and speech at the same place. But because we're bilingual, we're from a bilingual family. So Gabby has also joined another speech therapist outside of the center. And through the years, we've been having therapies every week, about 4 to 5 times a week with different people. Right now, she still has her PT once a week, OT once a week, and we have verbal behavioral therapy once a week, and we are working with 2 speech pathologists and also an early interventionist, which is Dr. Kwan. She's a clinical psychologist and early interventionist, and she's been working with Gabby for almost 7 years now.
Wow.
So there we are. And she's now in a school, in Early Learning Center, which is a school inspired by Reggio Emilia approach. So it's very child-centered, and we have very good team work at school. The teachers are all on board. The assistant teachers are on board, and then the school coordinators help have meeting every like 3 to 4 months to update on where she is developmentally wise, and then what are like our goals, has it been achieved, and whether it is still applicable, or we need to set up new goals. So those are the process that we go through.
How
Yes.
would you say your experience has been in Thailand?
In Thailand, I would say apart from few therapists we have who has international exposure, for Thai therapists, their competency in their area of work is still not up to the international standard. However, we all have to make do with whatever is available. So that is for our family. But a lot of Thai families, they have more problem than this, because first of all, their knowledge about child development and the possibility of getting interventions is very little. And so they don't even know what services they should advocate for their children. And the public services are very, how would I say, it's not advanced, it's very basic, and sometimes some techniques that are used in Thailand right now are really way behind the international arena or anything in the West. Yeah, and sometimes it's to the extent of shocking, how they help the children to grow. But again, because of the very limited resource, which means we don't have a lot of therapists, and the therapies are not very specific. Mostly OTs are the people responsible for helping children with special needs in Thailand. We don't have pediatric PD. We don't have developmental therapy. Early interventionists are scattered around. Mostly we use classical ABA as a model. As in the recent years, there's an introduction of floor time, but it has been altered to suit the person's own understanding, and it's not even close to international standards. And so it's very difficult to get therapies and proper interventions in Thailand. And for those who can get, which is through some public organizations and hospitals, mainly it's all in the hospitals. Mm-hmm. So for them, the queue is like for three to 6 months before they get to see the professionals. So that's a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And it's, and it's kind of like, the children would be home, and if the parents have a better understanding, or, instinctively are able to help the children, they're lucky. But otherwise, a lot of parents are just, taking a backseat and then wait for the professionals to help, and it's 3 to 6 months before they get to see one.
So it seems like there's a lack of resources.
So I think that's the situation in Thailand. Yes. And lack of well, I would say lack of awareness. I see it getting better in the recent years due to some movements in the society trying to raise awareness about special needs. So it is more active. There are different groups of people who are, advocating for the children. So that we have seen improve in the recent years. I myself is involved in a foundation that myself and about 8 friends set up in 2010, and it's the first and one of the only special needs awareness center in Thailand. And through our work, we have seen improvement in recognition of the importance of early intervention. And then also we have lack of awareness, lack of understanding, and lack of professionals, because within a year there's only about few hundred people who actually graduate from any faculties from the universities that have anything to do with children with special needs. So it's either psychological department of some universities, either it's special education, specific field like OT. There's only 3 universities that offer the program.
Well, thank you. That was a great summary. So as a parent, what do you want most for your child?
I guess a quick answer would be I'd like her to be happy and develop to her full potential, wherever that is. I think that's the most important concern, and I would like her to be able to live life in the society, which in the bracket is not made to accommodate people with special needs to the maximum comfort level, to be able to be independent as much as possible. Yeah.
And what would you like professionals to do when they're working with Gabby?
I think the most important thing is to meet her where she is, and then challenge her to grow and to acquire new skills, and help her to achieve her potential wherever that is. So we never know where that will end. So I guess I would like to see professionals to be positive about things, and look at the possibilities, and just help her to on her journey to her full potential.
And if there was one thing that you want professionals to always keep in mind about you and your family, what would it be?
It will be that we are very unique. We are, Gabby is an individual, and she has, through the years, we have seen that she has so many talents, and she can be developed. So I think having that perspective and help her and guide her along the way is very important for us. And again, working with us, I know there are a lot of challenges in working with children with special needs and in their development. Yet for us parents, it is important for us to see the possibilities as well. Because every time I speak to an expert who has their perception based on the more classical view of children, it is impossible for me not to feel disheartened, and we have been working, like now it's been 8 years, and it's a long time in her life. It's like the all of her life, and to hear that what we have put in is actually not working, or is progressing, then it dampened our spirit. It's for me. It takes me like few days to pick myself up and and move on. But I know a lot of parents are not like this, and so that is we need to maintain our positivity to be able to meet every day's challenge. Because for experts, you meet our children like once a week or twice a week, but we're there like all the time, and it's almost like impossible for us to sit back and wallow in the unsuccessful endeavor for like even a few days. That means the opportunity lost in trying to get her to be on track is lost. Like we'll just be sitting and in self-pity, or I think that would be what I worry most. I'd like the team to stay positive and talk about possibilities. And yes, there are challenges, but I want to know how we are going to go over those challenges. What are we as a team can do together to get out from that spot and move forward? Yeah, that would be my my most concern and request.
Thanks, Plern. That was wonderful. It was really, really good to hear from that parent. Thanks.
Yeah, and every time I listen to that, I something new comes up every time. It's amazing how deep, someone's message can be. It just depends on what you're listening for, what, you know, what it is that you're listening for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, there.
So we just have a few more slides. And does anybody who is watching with us have anything that you want to talk about with us, about maybe what you learned from the video or what you'll be taking away from this presentation?
I can go ahead and say something about it.
Betsy?
I come from a very small town where there's a lot, it's predominantly Hispanic. And so it's kind of important to understand what type of upbringing these children have in terms of multiculturalism and things like that. I know just from classes I've taken past where some families who come from low socioeconomic status, they tend to not have a lot of social interaction with their kids just because they need to, you know, work more to put food on the table, and that kind of, and if the child has any type of disability that can kind of alter their learning and their way of improving the quality of life for that child. So I think just kind of understanding where the parents come from as well as what the child actually needs. I think that's just kind of, it's better to take kind of like a general, broader perspective of the family and not just focus on the child, because the family is ultimately their familiar support. They will actually work towards having the child have more academic success, better connections with people in the future and things like that. So
Great. Thanks, Emily. Very, very insightful comments.
thank you.
I think
Well,
Betsy was going to say something too. I don't know.
Betsy?
Hi. Thank you for all the information you presented. I think something that's been on my mind recently is, as a white woman, just going into a family's house where their traditions are different from mine, or their experience of life is very different, including, say, their experience of everyday racism. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on how best to be there with that family and provide for them, knowing that you can't, that I can't understand everything about where they're coming from. Thanks.
Sure, that is a dilemma that all of us white women face. And I hope that there were some ideas in just the parent coaching, the ideas around learning from the parent about their values and beliefs, about their culture, so that then you can think together about some solutions that might work for their family. Sara, Plern, do you want to add anything?
Well, I feel like that's kind of cultural differences at the individual level, I feel. And the way, I don't know if this can entirely translate, but sometimes when I, go to Thailand, although I look like other Thai people, I'm rarely treated like the, other Thai people. I think my American side kind of just comes out, and it's just, I'm just American, even though I look the same. And, what I've had to do kind of before I start, presenting, because just the way I talk sets me a little bit apart. And so what I've had to do is kind of name it a little bit, and say, yes, I do have a background that's, it's more Western. I have this kind of philosophy on my work. I know that I'm different because of these reasons. And so please, that's where I'm coming from. So it's kind of like what Mary said at the beginning of the presentation about just naming it, talking about it, kind of saying that this is the culture that you're from. And there's some things that, I won't be able to understand. And there's, and that's okay because we're here because of this reason. And so, I felt like that's just saying it has helped me, at least when I do work in other countries.
Good, thanks.
One other thing that I would add is that I come in as a white woman to many different homes with lots of different cultures. And like Plern was saying, I'll name it too. I'll call myself the Anglo, and let them know that I want to learn their experience and ask them questions and ask them, what kind of mass media sites I should go to know more about their challenges specific to them, or what they'd like to refer me to. And that's helped a lot, I think, just to kind of understand not only their individual experience, but maybe how they define themselves in the larger ecological model as well. And I think it's you showing them respect about their point of view. And then you can kind of come back and focus on what their challenges are and what the strengths are of the family unit themselves. But I think it is nice to kind of ask for their worldview and learn what kind of resources they can share with you and refer you to get more information.
Thanks, Sara. Does that help, Betsy?
Yes, thank you very much. And I also really thought the parenting questionnaire was a really helpful one as well.
Good.
Thanks.
Well, we're glad both Betsy and Emily could join us. And there are several references in the PowerPoint. Like I said, we will post the PowerPoint on the Fielding Moodle site. And then you will be able to get this recording. If you go to youtube.com/user/Fielding Graduate University. Well, university is just UNIV. But thank you very much for joining us. We have had fun putting this presentation together, and we look forward to maybe you becoming more connected with fielding.
Thank you.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Okay, good.